Ever stared up at the stars and wondered if we could live on another planet? What if I told you we might have to terraform our own planet first? Sounds crazy, right? But imagine this. The ground beneath Yellowstone National Park, one of the most beautiful places on Earth, starts to rumble. Not just a little tremor, but the awakening of a sleeping giant, a supervolcano. If Yellowstone were to have a full-blown supereruption, it wouldn't just be a local disaster. It would be a global catastrophe. We're talking about an event so massive it could plunge the entire planet into a volcanic winter, blocking out the sun for years, even decades. This isn't science fiction. It's a real, albeit very low probability threat that scientists study. So, what would happen next? Could we, the survivors, terraform our own home back to life? First, let's understand the sheer scale of a Yellowstone eruption. Imagine the entire United States from coast to coast, covered in a layer of ash. Close to the volcano, that layer could be meters thick, burying cities. Further away, it would be like a thick gray snowfall that just never melts. This isn't fluffy snow either. Volcanic ash is made of tiny, sharp fragments of rock and glass. It's heavy, abrasive, and when it gets wet, it turns into a concrete-like sludge. The immediate aftermath would be devastating. Buildings would collapse under the weight of the ash. Any crops in the fields would be smothered. Water sources would be contaminated, and the air would be toxic to breathe for hundreds, if not thousands of miles around the eruption site. It's a grim picture, but the biggest, most world-altering effect would be on our climate. A supereruption would blast an enormous cloud of ash and sulfur dioxide gas high into the stratosphere. This cloud would act like a planetary sunshade, reflecting sunlight back into space. The result? A volcanic winter. Global temperatures could drop by 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. That might not sound like much, but it's enough to completely disrupt growing seasons worldwide. Summers could become as cold as winters, leading to widespread crop failures and a global famine. Life as we know it would grind to a halt. The global supply chain would collapse, power grids would fail. It would be a fight for survival on a scale humanity has never seen. So, faced with a frozen, ash-covered world, how do we even begin to rebuild? This is where the concept of terraforming Earth comes in. Terraforming is usually about making other planets, like Mars, habitable for humans. But in this scenario, we'd be applying those same principles to our own damaged planet. The number one priority would be securing the basics: food, water, and shelter. Shelter would likely mean going underground or creating sealed habitats. Think of something like the biodomes you see in sci-fi movies, but built for survival, not for show. These structures would need to protect us from the toxic air and the cold, with their own filtered air supplies and internal heating. We couldn't just walk outside anymore. Any excursion would require protective gear, much like an astronaut on another planet. Next, water. Rivers and lakes would be choked with ash. We'd need massive filtration systems to make water safe to drink again. It would be a huge engineering challenge requiring a lot of energy and resources, which would be incredibly scarce. But the biggest challenge? Food. With the sun blocked and the land covered in sterile ash, traditional agriculture would be impossible. Our survival would depend on closed-loop food production. This means growing food indoors without soil or sunlight. We're talking about massive hydroponic and aeroponic farms. Picture huge multi-level warehouses filled with vertical racks of plants, all grown under the purple glow of LED lights. These systems use nutrient-rich water instead of soil and can be incredibly efficient, but they require a tremendous amount of power. So where would we get this power? Forget fossil fuels. The infrastructure would be gone. Our best bet would be geothermal and nuclear energy. Geothermal plants could tap into the Earth's natural heat, and ironically, the same volcanic activity causing the problem could also be part of the solution. Nuclear power, if we could maintain and protect the plants, would provide a consistent and powerful energy source to run our biodomes and farms. For years, maybe even a decade or more, humanity would exist in these isolated pockets of civilization, these arcs of life. We'd be living in a world of artificial suns and manufactured environments, waiting for the sky to clear. So when does the real terraforming begin? It starts when the volcanic winter finally starts to fade. As the ash and aerosols slowly settle out of the atmosphere, sunlight would begin to reach the surface again. But the world it reveals would be alien. The landscape would be gray and barren. Most plant and animal life on the surface would have perished. Our first big terraforming project would be cleaning up the ash. This would be a monumental task, probably the largest civil engineering project in human history. We'd need to clear it from vast areas of land to even think about farming again. Where would we put it all? Maybe we'd use it as a building material or simply create new hills and landscapes with it. Then we'd have to literally bring the soil back to life. Volcanic ash isn't fertile on its own. We would need to start a process of soil remediation. This means introducing microbes, worms, and organic matter to break down the ash and mix it with the underlying soil. We could use compost from our indoor farms and specially cultivated bacteria to kickstart this process. It would be a slow, painstaking effort, field by field, valley by valley. Reintroducing plant life would be the next step. We couldn't just plant anything. We'd start with hardy pioneer species, things like lichens, mosses, and tough grasses that can grow in poor conditions and help to further break down the ash and stabilize the new soil. Think of them as the terraforming vanguard. These plants would slowly, over generations, create the foundation for more complex ecosystems to return. Simultaneously, we'd have to manage a wildly unpredictable climate. As the planet warms up again, we could face a new problem, a runaway greenhouse effect. The same sulfur dioxide that caused the cooling would eventually combine with water in the atmosphere to create acid rain, which would further damage the recovering environment. As the planet's natural cycles, like the carbon cycle, try to rebalance, we could see chaotic weather patterns, massive floods as glaciers melt, and huge swings in temperature. We need advanced climate modeling and maybe even some geoengineering techniques to try and stabilize our planet's climate. What about the animals? We'd have to rely on frozen zoos, repositories of frozen eggs, sperm, and embryos from thousands of species that we wisely created before the disaster. Using surviving animals from protected reserves or our sealed habitats, we could begin captive breeding programs. Reintroducing animals into the wild would be a delicate process, timed perfectly with the recovery of their habitats. We'd have to rebuild the entire food web, from the smallest insects to the largest predators. So could we do it? Could we terraform Earth after Yellowstone blows? The honest answer is, maybe. It would test the limits of our technology, our ingenuity, and most of all, our ability to cooperate. It would require a global effort on an unprecedented scale, with every surviving human working towards a common goal. The world that emerged would be different. Some species would be lost forever. The continents themselves might look a little different, but it's a testament to the human spirit that we can even conceive of such a challenge. We are a species that adapts, that innovates, and that survives. And the lesson from this thought experiment isn't just about disaster preparedness. It's a profound reminder of how fragile our beautiful planet is and how we are its ultimate custodians. The best way to survive a terraforming scenario is to never have to do it in the first place. Thanks for watching this journey into a possible future. It's a bit of a heavy topic, but it's fascinating to think about. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more big what-if questions, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think our biggest challenge would be in this scenario. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.